The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you always.
You're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars, episode 152.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Angela Sealana, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From movies to books to TV shows and more, we're looking at the deeper themes and meanings found in Star Wars and the other fun stuff too. So today we are diving into The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2, entitled Chapter 18, The Mines of Mandalore. And joining me today are Jason Eugea. Hey, Jason.
Hi, how are you guys?
Very well. And we also have Kathryn Laffrey. Hi, Kathryn.
Hello.
And we have our very own Mudhorn, Andrew Hermiz. Hey, Andrew.
Hello, good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you. All right, so we have a lot to talk about. And usually we summarize the episode. I'm going to just kind of skip that because I feel like we've all seen it and we have so much to discuss. So we'll just get right into it. Let's hear what you guys all thought of this episode, and we'll just keep it to first impressions for now. So, Jason, we'll start with you. What was your first impression of this episode?
Well, when I saw the title, I was just like, man, are we going there that fast? And yep, we went there that fast. So it was sort of a shock moment.
Yeah. Kathryn, what about you?
Oh, I was wowed and happy to be splunking.
Andrew?
Yeah, it was a great episode and one that I think, like Jason mentioned, like we're getting right into the story, into the main, I guess, plot line, at least early on this season. And I think like a lot of reviews and tweets I read, like this should have been like probably attached to the first episode. Because it was like a great follow-up to that first episode and really, it paid off, a lot of the things that were presented in that first episode where initially that first episode felt like another, okay, we're just establishing, some plot. There's some side missions, but no, episode 2, we're right in it. And, yeah, I thought it was a spectacular episode and maybe one of my favorites, in the series as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. I had fun with it too. There's some things about this that really hit home for me. And then I gotta say that at the end, probably, for like a good minute, my mouth was just like, I could not close my mouth. Like I was wide open at the very end. So yes, we will talk about all of that good stuff. Let's start at the very beginning when we have Din arriving at Peli Motto's garage. Good old Peli, our friend. And it's on Boonta Eve. So lots of things happening. And our expectations are changing already when they have their talk and we get R5D4, who is a legacy character from the original Star Wars film, if anyone listening is not aware. I was wondering if any of you all have read the short story called The Red One that's in the book From a Certain Point of View about R5.
Oh. I haven't.
No? Okay, so in that short story, because that's like the one From a Certain Point of View that I do have, it is actually revealed that, so just to refresh people's memories, when we first saw R5, it's when Uncle Owen needs to buy some droids, right? And so we see him and Luke, and they're working together, and the Jawas are trying to sell their wares, and we see R2 wanting to get sold, right? And so he's making a stink, basically. So in the short story, it actually reveals that R2, when he's beeping and blooping, he is insisting that he needs to get sold in order to save the galaxy. And so this story says that R5 intentionally blows his motivator as a self-sacrifice. So, I mean, I don't know if that's technically canon, because here he seemed like an immense coward.
Yes.
But what was you all's favorite thing about this scene? What did you like, and what did you notice about this scene at the garage?
I'm just surprised that Din got the ship. Of course, he basically had to build it himself, the N1, because we're seeing the dark side of Pelly. You know, she's a scam artist. I mean, we could kind of see that before, but now it's just right there. It's proof. And the way she was able to sell that droid and get him off the trail of IG-11 was pretty shocking, I thought.
Catherine, what about you?
She's been hanging around with her Jawa boyfriend too much, because she's out there chop shopping speeders, and it was funny. I mean, her missing tooth, I got to hear the story. There's got to be a great story behind why she's missing a tooth. Someone popped her in the face, I'm sure. But just seeing her as like Auntie Pelly to Grogu is just adorable. They have just the cutest relationship.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love the relationship that she has with Grogu, and it's just nice seeing her pop up again. As she's always like a splendid sight, and it's always it's going to be funny. They're going to have like a cool interaction. I sort of like the whole okay, we're just let's forget about the IG droid and getting that fixed. Because I was worried again. I was worried like, oh, are we going to spend too much time on this? Is episode 2 just going to? Are we just going to like? All right, how are we going to find this? This chip that we need for the IG droid. So I'm glad that they didn't waste any time, and I thought that this droid, the R5D4. Mm-hmm. I thought played a way more funny and I guess as we see later in the episode, serves a great purpose. So yeah, I thought it was a fun way to start the episode.
And after that we join Grogu and Mando on the way to Mandalore already, and of course R5's with them. But we see how Din speaks to Grogu like a father. And of course, we've seen that in other contexts, but I think this was especially, I guess, intentionally so. And, feel free to kind of jump around the timeline of the episode as we are discussing this topic or any topic. But I'd like to actually go to Andrew first with this one. I know all of y'all have kids, but Andrew, I don't know if you were struck as a dad by that little moment, but then also just overall in this episode, like about Grogu and Din's relationship and kind of how it's developed over these, I guess, couple of years or so.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Din is dad. I mean, he's daddy, and Grogu's the child, and that's something that was established from the beginning of the series. Like before we knew Grogu's name, it was referred to a lot as, other than Baby Yoda, as the child. And we're seeing this pay off in a big way. I think after the story arc in Boba Fett, where we see how Grogu comes back to Din, after that, it was just like, if there was any sort of like doubt that they weren't going to come back together, or that their relationship was going to, naturally grow apart if Grogu was going to be gone for a long amount of time, that was like put to rest. And we saw the embrace that Din had with Grogu when they reunited, and when things kicked off in episode 1 of this season, you know, the interactions that they have, it's just evolved naturally into this, you know, father-son sort of relationship, and it doesn't get old. It doesn't get any less adorable. It's not cringy. It's really, I think, earned, and I think this series has done a good job of, you know, because I think they could have easily messed that up. I think the series has done a good job of them allowing their relationship to get to this point, because it's hard. It could be hard to imagine someone like Din, who's so like matter of fact and doesn't have any real relationships in his life, and is like obviously this weird kind of culty sort of figure. But when he's around Grogu, like he kind of like no pun intended, his armor just falls off, and we see like who he really is intimately, and it's only really in those moments that we see that side of Din.
After watching this episode, I had to go back and watch The Rescue. And I was so glad I did, because like you said, Andrew, his armor falls off, literally, when he's with Grogu. And right before he takes his helmet off, he says, "I'll see you again, I promise." And then that's when we get the face-to-face moment. And it's so fascinating because Din's last memory of his actual father is his last face-to-face moment with a father figure. After that, everyone else has had a helmet on in his life. So it's no wonder he has no attachments to anyone. And now, you know, he takes his helmet off for Grogu, and you get that deep face-to-face. It made me think about, in the Bible, all those references of face-to-face with God the Father, in that face-to-face moment. And then to know that this has been proven out, that of all mammals, only human males can visually recognize their offspring. No other mammal on Earth can the male, the father, recognize its offspring except for humans. And so I thought that was really just kind of neat, just to get that strong face-to-face moment. Of course, he's going to take his helmet off for Grogu because he wants that bond. He wants to stay close to him. So it was neat to see it all come back around, and now he is just being full-on dad with him.
That's awesome. Jason, I know you have older kids, and I was wondering if you kind of saw yourself and how Din was kind of like showing Grogu the ropes of how the ship worked and everything.
Yeah, recently we got to remodel a house, and I actually employed my kids. They were teenagers, and they had their little jobs around town, and my oldest daughter, she actually quit her job at the grocery store and came to work for me. And at other times, I really didn't give the other two a choice. I said, "You're all coming over here and you're going to work for me today." So we got to do that together, and we all figured it out together because, you know, YouTube knows lots of stuff. So, but there were certain things, you know, it was my house and I wanted it done a certain way. So, you know, the way he was teaching him how to navigate and he got to show him his, you know, essentially his hometown, right? You know, I grew up right over there and on Concordia, and, you know, I've done that with my kids when we go to visit my hometown. You know, this is where I grew up and this is where I went to school and stuff like that. So I saw a lot of parallels there. Yeah, that's really cool. And it's, when you think about just the episode as an entirety, it's really cool how Bo-Katan just acknowledges Grogu as Din's kid. You know, I think she says like your kid or something like that. And yeah, it's finally gotten to that point, and that feels, I think, very satisfying, as you were saying, Andrew. So here we are, we reach the surface of Mandalore, and we see how it is covered in this glass that kind of reminded me of Superman's Fortress of Solitude.
or even because it's green, like the Emerald City from The Wizard of Oz. So I was sort of wondering if y'all had any other thoughts as far as like connections, or I don't know, even if there's symbolism to that possibly, or what that might signify sort of in the story. If y'all have any, do you have any thoughts on that?
I thought it was interesting how, they have to, all you see from space is the storms and everything. And then, they're flying through the storms. So you think it's going to be like that all the way down, sort of like the Matrix, where everything's all clouded over and ruined. But then they come out of the storm and everything's clear and shiny. I mean, it's all destroyed, but at least there's a calm.
I had a totally different take on this one. Being an art, and I had my godfather was a stained glass artist, and so right away I'm going, what makes glass that color green? And first thing I came across was depression glass, and depression glass has uranium in it, and it actually will glow under blue light. It's still slightly radioactive. And knowing that the planet was covered in sand right before it was fusion bombed, it makes sense that you would have this green colored glass that clear. Oh my gosh, came across some crazy deep dive stuff that I'm just going to have to hand off to Jimmy Akin Mysterious World, because there was some crazy stuff about sheets of glass across different deserts and places around the world that they say happened long ago, but the area is so large that it would have had to have been from multiple asteroids exploding just above the surface at the right time to create these sheets of glass like this in the sand. And I even came across someone saying that there was at one point in time a natural uranium reactor in a region in like mid-African area that just was like, they said, probably burning for thousands of years, and just huge chunks of this greenish yellow and green glass are all over the place. Some even wonder if there wasn't, some crazy explosion back in prehistoric civilization that was really advanced, but it's just fun to read about all that stuff.
Wow.
And I guess it's basically the same color as any place where the U.S. did testing out in New Mexico and places, the glass fusion of the sand and stuff.
Yeah, I have absolutely nothing to add to that. That's I just noticed it was green, and the caves were green. It was glowy green caves, and once we got in the caves, yeah, that's all I noticed.
They actually used the same name of is it Trinitite? The glass that was formed in New Mexico after the nuclear blast. They used the same name for the crystals on Mandalore.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Yeah. We'll hand that over to Jimmy Akin.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I know you listen because you send us feedback.
Naturally.
And so, okay, whatever it means, we're here. We're in this glassed over planet. And of course, we have some issues, right? We have some problems, and we come across these former wasteland dwellers, the Alamites. Definitely, to me, it looked like guys in suits. But I was wondering if these reminded you of like creatures from any other story. I think I heard someone say like Journey to the Center of the Earth was something that kind of came up for people. I don't know if you all had any thoughts as you saw these guys kind of popping up all over the place.
They looked like the Morlocks from Time Machine.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a sci-fi creature like this in almost every genre out there. The only thing that was crazy was seeing their tusk. So I was like, oh, is there some relation there to the mythosaur?
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I just thought like it was sort of like, oh, well, since the planet has been dissipated, if these are the only like living, I guess, two-legged creatures on the planet. It's like evolution going backwards or starting over again. That's just the way I thought about it. Like, you think about Mandalore being like this sort of sweeping, glorious city where obviously technology was probably booming and all that, and then you just see like the only surviving people on the planet are like these literal cavemen. So I thought that was sort of interesting. And I guess we see clearly, like, even though they're, the only people on the planet, it seems like there are other animals and creatures that can definitely outsmart them.
Yeah, but Bo-Katan later mentioned that they used to live on the, essentially in the outskirts and where people weren't, because they were afraid of the people. And now it seems like they're not. They need to eat, and there's nobody there. There's nothing else there, so they're gonna get what they can. But
yeah. And then we have this amazing, creepy spider, vampire, lizard, droid creature trap thing.
How many people jumped? I did.
That was so
creepy.
Smart.
Did that creature use the helmet as bait?
Yeah, I think
oh yeah,
so.
definitely,
Yeah.
Has anyone read, oh my God, a new Dawn? It's about Kanan Jarrus and Hera, how they meet. Because there's a character in there that this guy could be what's left over from him. This Count Vidian. And he was a man who got rich taking over mining operations, got sick, and to keep himself alive, just kept adding more and more cyborg attachments to himself. They say he was probably less human than cyborg anymore. But just the way that he acted and was so vicious. And if someone got in his way, he would take him down. Seeing that one eye and half a brain left scurrying around, I was like, oh my gosh, it could so be him down in the mines trying to eke out his last little bit of existence to stay alive forever, vampiring off of anyone who can get. It's just like, oh, he just gave me the creeps. So that's my theory who that is.
Yeah, I immediately looked that creature up, like, is this like canon somewhere? And yeah, like on Wikipedia it was like unidentified arachnid, android or something like that, a creature. So like, oh, okay.
Well, I noticed a connection to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie that came out a few years ago. There's a character in there that has all these legs, and one of the legs on that character kind of drags behind. And when this creature, his head comes off and he's dragging himself, those two little back legs are just sort of dragging. I was like, that's the guy on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, it was a serious upgrade of Grievous.
It was fantastic how they created it. I mean, I'm curious if it was entirely CG or if it was some parts practical. But it just looked amazing. And I like your theory, Kathryn. I think even if it isn't supposed to be that character specifically, I'm sure it was at least inspired by him. So that's neat. I thought it was interesting that it seemed, I mean, I don't know if you all had the same impression, but it seems like that creature or thing or person or whatever was getting Din's blood from him. Is that what you thought too? Yeah.
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 Oh yeah.
Because as I was watching, I was like, well, this whole series we've been thinking about and reflecting on how Din is not Mandalorian by blood, and neither is Grogu, of course, and Grogu is also not Din's blood son. So there isn't a blood connection between them or with this particular place. But somehow like his blood kind of being extracted, it almost reminded me that in some ways Din is more, or wants to be, Mandalorian in some ways more than Bo almost seems like she wants to. So I don't know if you all, what you think of my weird reflection there.
I'm actually still trying to figure out one thing about the Mandalorians, because I was watching and one commentator mentioned that Mandalore was populated by humans who went there. They're not originally from there. And that those crazy creatures we saw in the cave were actually the native inhabitants of the planet. And so it's like, okay, so it helped to make sense of the Mandalorian foundlings not necessarily being like residents of Mandalore or the area of space that's the Mandalorian space, because they have several different planets. But still, it's just like, so wait, they're all just like a gathering of people under the creed? Is that all it is? Or is there some, feel of like, hey, I'm from the home world, so to speak?
Well, I mean, it sounds similar to Christianity. Anybody can be a Christian if you accept the creed, right? Accept baptism, accept creed. And we're seeing a lot of those themes, with the Mandalorians. There was a lot of talk last week about what was she going to do with that bowl of water, right? We never got to officially see that, but it's looked very symbolic of baptism, and anybody that's baptized and, later on says the creed at mass, they're Catholic, they're Christian. So, that's where I feel the title of last week's episode, The Apostate, it really made me think, well, why is he the apostate? Because he wants to be redeemed. He wants to be part of that culture. Whereas Bo-Katan looks like she just doesn't care.
But we have to remember there's so many different factions of the culture. We don't even know if the Watch is really the pure Mandalorian culture. They could be just a cult of people that have gone off the deep end. Just like in Christianity, you can go, vice or scruples, and you got to find that balance. So
yeah,
I'm also
virtues
wondering,
in the middle.
Yeah, what's the balance with what a true Mandalorian is?
Yeah, and I think we'll get to the end, what happens at the end of the episode, but I think the end of the episode really, it confuses that more, because you hear Bo-Katan's side of it and what her beliefs are, and you have Din's, and then by the end of it, it's like, oh wow, well, maybe I guess most people would kind of lean towards Bo-Katan's sort of theories and beliefs on what a Mandalorian is, and her coming to the reality, like, oh yeah, she's reasonable. She's like, oh yeah, Mandalore it's over. It's no one's there. There's nothing to rule. There's no creed that's gonna that we adhere to that's gonna change anything, and all it's ever done is divided people. But by the end of it, everything is turned on its head. So now it's like, okay, what are we supposed to believe? Like, is there something more to Din's faction and the Watch and what they believe? And like you said, it's probably somewhere in between. But we'll learn more obviously as we go along.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Bo-Katan, so because of this vampire spider, whatever we want to call it, Grogu has to apply his Boy Scout skills and get in his hover stroller and get back to the ship and recruit Bo-Katan, and he does. I really liked that it was kind of like a Jedi who motivated Bo to return to Mandalore. But what were your thoughts as we revisited Bo and her castle, and kind of just where she is at this point? And I know, Jason, you had some thoughts on Bo being there.
Yeah, I mean, every time the N1 shows up in her space there, she's sitting on that throne just sulking. It makes me wonder, does she not have anything else to do? I mean, is she really that downtrodden that that's all she can think about all day? Or is it just a coincidence that she's sitting on that throne when he shows up?
Must be a comfy chair. I was thinking the same thing.
Like
I know. Is she just always there? Like, what? You're right.
Yeah, that's
is it
what
a
I was
coincidence?
wondering.
Like, it's a long hallway. It's a big building.
You know, and she's ready to fight him off. It almost seemed like if Din was in that pod or in the cockpit of that fighter, would she have challenged him? You know, could that have been an opportunity to challenge him for the Darksaber? She looked kind of mad until she sees just Grogu pop up, and she's like, her whole demeanor switched. Like, uh-oh, what's wrong? We got to go find them. Let's go help.
Are you ready for my crazy take on this one? Well, first of all, she's sitting there like someone who's lost their job, but still wants to maintain like they're still doing their job. She's by herself doing that, but she's also very depressed and very alone. And when Din first showed up, as he's walking away, she whispers, "Goodbye, Din Djarin." It was very much like a smited lover. She wants him to pursue her. It just felt like that. And then when the droid tells her, "Oh, look, he's back," and she's like, "Okay, that's it." You know, and she said the classic line of, "I want to be left alone." And as a mother of 3 daughters, and being a woman myself who has said that line many times when I don't want to be left alone, it did seem like she did not want to be left alone at that point. She needed him to help her as much as he needs her to help him. And I'm a sick romantic, so what can I say?
So you're shipping them.
Oh, yes, we are shipping them. 100%. Yeah, you could feel it. I feel the connection and the tension. But I think you put it. You made the point where like she doesn't know what she's supposed to do. Like, yeah. I mean, externally she's like saying all this stuff like, "Oh, it's over. There's nothing to rule anymore." She felt defeated like the first time, where it was revealed like, oh, she's, supposed to win the Darksaber in a battle. And, she wasn't going to just fight, Din. I mean, Din wasn't even willing to fight, obviously. And then, I mean, just a second before that, he would just want to give it to her. I think all that piled on, and then obviously we'll learn more, I guess, not only on this show, I'm sure on Ahsoka, when more characters come into play that Bo's connected to. But yeah, I mean, a character like her, and we know the lore. I mean, from the animated series, like we know that she's not one to just lay around, and I think that opportunity to save Din. Obviously, part of it was, there's, there is some sort of like care that she has for him. How deep that goes, we'll see. But I think a big part of it too is just like, okay, well, he actually went there. Let's go see what's going on. I want to go on this little adventure. So yeah, and we see she's in fine form. She hasn't lost a step. I mean, she like plowed through those alamites like butter, and used the Darksaber like a master.
Way better than Din.
Way better. I mean, it's not her first time wielding it, obviously. So it was obviously amazing. It's cool to see a Bo-Katan centered episode. I mean, this was I think Katie Sackhoff's finest performance as Bo-Katan, and it was cool to see her shine, and I'm excited to see her be a big part of the season.
I'm so interested to hear everybody's takes on her performance, on Katie Sackhoff's performance here, because I did not pick up any romantic vibes whatsoever, and I hope they never get together. That's my personal opinion.
Oh, those are all in my head. Yeah, I don't think there was anything romantic. I don't think there was anything romantic either. I just, it's sort of like I want them to be together. But yeah.
Hey, Din did say one thing every woman wants to hear, and he says, Bo-Katan was right. It's like, yes.
That is a good point. I'll give you that. No, but I saw her as, and taking the whole context of the episode in, I saw her as exhausted by the wars and the failures, and sort of like a person who has been through the ringer. And I also saw her as a skeptic in terms of Mandalore's ways, the mythology and the creed and the faith that Din's coming in with. And I thought it's interesting that, we've always, as you said, Andrew, we've always seen her as like this person of action, and here she is kind of just sitting in this castle, and she's constantly making these remarks throughout the episode of, well, this isn't how things always used to be, or the things didn't always used to look like this, or things were different back then. And just talking about the past a lot. And I suspect maybe, I don't know if Father Fett's listening to this, but I know he's a hardcore Bo-Katan fan. And I was wondering how he felt about that, about this kind of turn in her character arc and her attitude here. Do you guys think that her character development up to this point has felt natural? Did you feel like where she is at this point is forced? Or did you find it upsetting? Or do you just think, no, it makes sense and I can kind of see where she's coming from?
I think she seems, from her, within her lifetime, we know that as, Clone Wars, Rebels era, and now the Mandoverse. In her lifetime, she's never really gotten there, right? She's almost had it every time, and something goes wrong, like having the Darksaber given to her and then losing all of Mandalore. So I think when you say she's skeptic, she's cynical about that time period, but everything before that, all of the ancient stuff, she was very sarcastic. Like when she was reading that plaque on the near the living water, she was very sarcastic about it. Like, this is all silliness, right? And I think that maybe a little bit of that stems because of the past of her lifetime. And she's like, none of it makes sense anymore.
That's interesting when you look at her past. Well, first of all, she's second fiddle to her sister, who gets to take over the throne. She was bitter enough about something between her and her sister that she went and joined Death Watch, who eventually was instrumental in her sister's death. So she's got a lot of heartbreak there. In this episode, watching her and Din walk through what was once a hall covered with incredible artwork, and now it's just broken down, exploded, gray, nothing there, no color, none of the joy that was in that section. And now she's trying to find herself. She is like someone who probably once believed or wanted to believe, but never could get there. And now she's lost and wants to be found. And I think that's kind of what happened for me watching her through this one episode, brought her whole arc into one motion of wanting to be found. She really wants to know the truth, and seeing her read the plaque reminded me of a lot of times I have taken people, Catholic, Christian, or other, into beautiful, large and small Catholic churches. talk about the art and show them what's there and what it means. And it amazes me how some people just want the tour and how other people will see the someone that all of this points to. And I feel like by the end of this episode, she started seeing that it points to something more than what she believed as a child.
Yeah, I think, Angela, to answer your question, I think it made a lot of sense where her character is at. Again, like everyone's pointed out, I mean, everything that she's went through, it is that exhaustion, and it is that sort of just defeatedness and like losing, everyone she's been close to, whether it was to the war, whether it was just through, obviously her sister died. I mean, she's just seen so much. I mean, she's had a lot of highs, and then, she's only been experiencing lows for the most part. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think the way season 2 ended, and, even though she was a part of, a victory at the end there, I mean, she in the end felt defeated that, she couldn't wield a darksaber. And then that led to like, well, even if she were to get it, like, what is she going to rule? What is there what's left? Who's going to even follow her? She doesn't, she doesn't have like a following or an army of Mandalorians that will support her. So, it's finding her in this position, and then again getting this opportunity where Grogu comes and asks her to save Din. It's like in Christianity, it's where it says like it's not good that man should be alone, and we see her, right away. She has a mission. She has a purpose. We see her in her glory. She's using her skills to save someone, and she's right away back to her old self. And yeah, it was cool to see that sort of transformation happen quickly, because I think if we kept seeing Bo-Katan, if she just sort of like was this sort of figure that was like hiding in her castle for most of the season, I think that might have been kind of lame or out of character. So I'm glad that we're hitting the ball running here with her character and seeing her to her full potential.
True, definitely. And I think a lot of people could probably relate to seeing her in that state because, imposter syndrome is definitely real. I mean, once you get to a place where you feel like I am a failure and nothing works out and I'm totally incompetent, it's very easy to get depressed. And I don't know if that was what she was, but in terms of her sarcasm and towards the mythology and the legend and the almost religious aspects, of her people, I thought that was it made for really cool interactions between her and Din, because it was almost like a cradle Catholic versus a convert. It's like Din was the convert who came in and he sees everything and he appreciates everything with these new eyes, where for Bo it was like, oh yeah, I know where the living waters are. It's like, I used to go there all the time and it's no big deal. And once you see it, it's really nothing. And not to say that every cradle Catholic is like that. I'm a cradle Catholic.
I was like that for a long time.
But it's easy to get like that, right? Because you take things for granted.
One other interesting thing in the relationship with Bo-Katan and Din in this, she has rescued him twice from being trapped in a cage that he allowed himself to fall into. So on the ship, when he went off with those guys, I said, oh yeah, we'll take you to people of your kind. And he ends up under the grate on the ship, and she rescues him from that. And then here he is again, trapped in a cage that he fell into himself. And so she's rescued him twice from a cage. So it makes you think it's like, I think they'll be rescuing each other, where he'll help her see more, which she did already, and then she'll help him to break out of the small cage of tunnel vision. This is all I know. This is how it has to be, because she's already done that just little by little with him.
Yeah, they're a good pair for sure. And something that that really stuck out at me, and I think it was very intentional on the part of the writers, was this quote where she says, "What pains me is seeing our own kind fight one another time and time again, killing each other for reasons too confusing to explain. It made us weak. We had no hope to resist being smashed." And to me, that reminded me of what's happening like here and now in our society, where there's this intense tribalism and these squabbles about, identity and who's in the group and who's acceptable within the group and who's not acceptable and who should be kicked out. And whether that's politics or religion or even, a whole lot of other aspects of human life these days, I think that was probably meant to sort of, remind us of where we are with those kind of situations, that a lot of infighting and extreme tribalism can really damage humanity. And so Bo-Katan is sort of almost like, in a way for us, sort of like prophesying, this could happen, look at what could happen if this continues in a way. So, that's something that I took away from that interaction as well. So, they're going on this pilgrimage, or she's kind of his guide as they're going into the mines. And, I think that, as we see again, she's talking about the rituals. They felt performatory when she would do them. It was like an empty show. She's reading the plaque, like you said, very scoffingly. We also see her watching Din go into those waters as he is professing the Mandalorian creed. And I don't know if you all had any thoughts about that moment of when he is, it's really kind of like a baptism situation or a ritual bathing situation. And just how she was reacting. I didn't really know how to read her face, and I was wondering how you all read that moment.
I definitely read her face as saying, as she was watching him, she was thinking, this guy gets it. This guy wants to be Mandalorian. This guy, whether he was born that way or not, whether he's following the right, whether his group is a cult or not, he truly believes this. And I could see in her face, I'm missing something that he has. I want what he has. That's what I saw in her face.
No.
Yeah, there was sort of like in that moment where she's telling that story about her father and the sacrifice that he made and dying in the war. And Din's response to that was, "This is the way," honoring her father. And you could tell, with her performance and on her face that she really was, she really respected that and was sort of struck by that. And she had this sort of newfound respect for Din. And again, I think you made a good point. Maybe she realized like maybe there's something that she is missing or something in him that she didn't notice until now. And it definitely got her, put her in a place to where she was not seeing what Din was doing as much of a charade as she thought it was. And then obviously by the end with the mythosaur, everything just sort of turns around for her, and we didn't even need to see her face. We could tell by her expression with the helmet on. But yeah, I think, she obviously went into this initially thinking like, okay, let's just get on with this show. But I think it all turned right there after she told that story about her father and the way Din responded. I think that's when it started shifting for her.
Kathryn, what are your thoughts about Bo's, observations of Din, and do you think that sort of is contributing to a change of heart in her?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Din's sincerity when he walked into the water definitely reminded me of actually an event that happened a year ago. I went to visit a friend of mine in England, and we were visiting the Holy Island, where the Lindisfarne Gospels are from. And we went into one of the churches that was once Catholic and is now just part of a museum. And we happened to be there at a time when it was time to say the Angelus. And there were some beautiful tapestries and things still from the old Catholic church. And we just stopped and was like, we're going to say the Angelus now. And we just said it with just much, just real. And to see the reaction of people around us, it was as if all of a sudden the place meant something again. It's not just a museum. This is a holy place. That's why it's called Holy Island. So, and I've been, like I've said, in and out of churches that are, part-time museums, sadly. But just to see the people that when something real happens there and it affects them, like being at Mass in a major cathedral that during the week is sometimes a museum, and there's having people interact with, oh wait, there's actually Mass happens here. So it does change you. It makes you stop and think that there's a deeper, real truth behind it all. It's not just show. Yeah.
And let's talk about how Din and the others call these living waters. That's, actually really ancient religious language that is used in real life. And I know in Judaism, the ritual baths are called mikvahs, and those are referred to as living waters that a person would participate in, and still, Orthodox and other, sects of Judaism continue this practice of associating blessings and renewal and newness of life with submersing into a mikvah, the living waters. And it allows them to, again, participate in communal life and in the temple worship, back when the temple existed. And of course, I know as Christians, we probably saw that as the baptismal font, and in the early Christian church, and still today in many Christian churches, there is a full immersion that people actually go down steps, just like Din did in the episode, into the waters like that. And I was thinking specifically when you go to the Holy Land in Nazareth, there is a church where the Holy Family lived, where their house was. And it, as Christianity developed, the Christians built a baptismal font there at their house in Nazareth. And it has those steps going down like that. And each step was supposed to sort of represent a moment in your journey to your new life in Christ. So that's full of symbolism as well. And I know, Andrew, you're from the Chaldean tradition, and maybe a lot of folks who are listening, they may not realize that there's all kinds of different Christian traditions. So I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would add, the one thing Eastern Catholics do is we do baptism and confirmation at the same time. So when you're baptized, obviously usually as a baby, you're baptized and confirmed, and when confirmation is, the point of confirmation is that it's sealing you with the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and it's readying you to be of service to the church, to the body of Christ. And I think that's totally what's happening with Din. I mean, that's the whole point of what he's doing is not only, being baptized, not only being cleansed of his sins, his original sin, I guess, being of taking his mask off, but being confirmed. He is affirming that he is going to give his life to the Mandalorian way, and you can see that. I mean, before he gets sucked down, even when he's just talking about doing this, you can see it invigorates him. Like it is his purpose. It is what drives him, and he wants nothing more than to just give his unending loyalty to the Mandalorian way, and to be cleansed, and to be, that this is something that motivation, that invigoration is sort of like the strength that he's getting from, the quote unquote Holy Spirit, right? And I think that is sort of a cool thing to look at it as both a baptism and a confirmation at the same time, which is, again, something I can relate to being a Chaldean Catholic, and something that the Eastern Church does. But yeah, it's sort of like, okay, I think Eastern Catholics, I think it's the best way to do it, because, you just knock two birds with one stone. I've always looked at it like two sacraments in one. That's pretty cool. But yeah, it's cool to look at it that way.
I think it's so cool that for us in the West, at least, or the Western tradition, this Sunday we had the gospel that actually specifically mentioned living water in the encounter of Jesus with the Samaritan woman, and they're having this interreligious dialogue, almost like Din and Bo-Katan are having interreligious dialogue in a way, and talking about living waters. And what Jesus says is that his water that he will give is a living water that quenches all thirst. And so as you're talking about Din, being confirmed, to me, it's like he has constantly throughout the series had this thirst to be recognized as a true Mandalorian, and to know what it is to be a true Mandalorian, and finally to actually go to Mandalore, into the living waters, and profess the creed. I mean, that's just like, and then to do it with a Mandalorian princess and a mythosaur, like, I don't think you could really like go any further like Mandalorian than that. And plus he has a darksaber.
Does anyone think the mythosaur pulled him down?
That's what I want to ask. So what did you guys think? Why did he fall?
Beskar is pretty heavy. I thought there was just a cliff and he just fell down. That mythosaur was not moving. He barely rolled his eyes.
He went down so hard and fast, though. She had to like jetpack it to keep up with him.
Well, he took his jetpack off, so obviously he couldn't jetpack back up. So I think, because I had the same thought, like, did something grab him? But I'm like, well, with all that Beskar, if you're not walking, if there's no foundation, and there's like, it's deep waters, you're going straight to the bottom. I mean, it's like tying yourself to a millstone, just going to the bottom. That's what I thought, at least. By the time we saw the mythosaur, it looked like it was just sleeping and it barely woke up. So I don't think, there could be arguments for both, but that was just the way I saw it.
Watching it again, I did see stairs as she dove in.
Yep.
There were a lot more stairs going down.
There was a lot of stairs under the water.
And not to sound gross or anything, but I have seen ducks taken down by snapping turtles around here. So he looked like he was pulled under.
But the mythosaur seemed pretty calm when she saw him.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it was like a religious experience that happened. I mean, I don't know, but I guess what we do know is that this whole experience of, Bo encountering Grogu and Din and the Mythosaur and seeing Din's faith and just having this whole experience, we know that she's gone through it, and we can imagine that it's going to have some impact on her. So what do you think is going to change in Bo-Katan going forward? And what do you think is going to change for Din Djarin going forward?
I think they've both been discovering the truths from both sides. It's like watching an interfaith couple when they're, developing in their relationship. You can be supportive of each other and look for that truth together. And then when you arrive at it together, like you hear some great conversion stories of listening to couples talk about, I ventured toward the faith first, and then, he or she followed along, and that relationship, that conversation of, not pounding it over their head of, you have to go with me because this is how it has to be, versus, okay, I see what you were raised with, what you've learned, how does that tie in, and work it toward. And a real conversation, a real debate leads to truth. And there's one truth. And so I think that's what it is about. They have an open conversation. And I hope it just keeps going. It could be great for Mandalore.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this, like this whole idea, it's a very common, allegory, going into the cave, and then obviously bathing in the living water is like, we've talked about the whole baptism, confirmation connections, and a lot of times in stories and in movies, when you go into a cave and you come back out a different person. Anything of like the allegory of the cave, like Plato's allegory, where it's, what you see inside of the cave, is your reality, and no matter what's going on outside. Obviously for Din, what's going on inside the cave is his reality, and it doesn't matter what Bo has told him or what society thinks about, what he believes in. He believes it so deeply. It's kind of like the allegory of the cave, like, turned on its head. It's like he's been in this cave, his whole life, basically.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. I mean, he's in his own cave, like under his mask, and he's discovering things about Bo-Katan inside the cave, and discovering, Bo is kind of like his version, his sort of like gateway to what's going on in the real world. And for Bo, I mean, Din is showing her this new reality in this cave where, she thought she knew everything because she's out in the real world and she's experienced, all these sort of things. She was in the war, and she knows, firsthand what the consequences were. So in that allegory, you would think like she knows what's going on. She's like the philosopher, she can think outside of the cave, but here she goes into the cave and like everything she's believed in is sort of like, okay, what? Mythosaur, experiencing this whole, from experiencing Din's creed and all that, and then saving him and encountering the Mythosaur, it's like, okay, what are we going to do now? So they're both coming out of this cave, different people. Obviously Din being reinvigorated and feeling like he's now done what he's needed to do to be redeemed. And now Bo trying to figure out like, okay, where do the Mandalorians go from here? Where do I go from here? What's my place in this sort of this story? I think it's cool to think of it that way. And obviously we saw a big spider. There's always spiders in a cave. So we had a robotic one. Yeah. So all the cave stuff was in this episode. It's like Lord of the Rings. Frodo gets caught, trapped by a spider. Din is our Frodo in this case. And yeah, I think exciting things to come. I think it puts both characters in sort of a new place. For Din, for a while we were like, okay, is he going to be loyal? Is he going to care? And then obviously we know he does, and he followed through. And now with Bo, it's like, okay, how does she react to this?
Mm-hmm.
I think if Din's gonna change and if they're gonna meet in the middle, if Bo's gonna find the reality of what it means to be a Mandalore through Din, and he's gonna see it through her, and they kind of meet in the middle, I don't think that he's gonna go along with it unless his the rest of his group, the rest of basically everybody that's underneath that follows, or the covert underneath the armorer. I don't think that unless they change, is he going to back off, because he is part of that group and he wants to remain part of that group. That's his family, and that's his only sense of family. So I think that if they're going to meet in the middle, the rest of the group needs to change too. But then I was also thinking, back to episode 1, when the armorer says that he needs to bathe in living waters, but he can't because everybody thinks it's destroyed. He says, okay, if I bring proof that I did that, I'm good, right? This is the way. Well, what's his proof? Well, now what if he flies back in on the mythosaur and he's riding the mythosaur back to the armorer? That's proof.
Take his confirmation sponsor, Bo-Katan.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, I was wondering, speaking of confirmation sponsors, like if Bo-Katan was the proof, like if her testimony would be the proof, just initially at least, because we all know he's going to end up with the mythosaur in the end, right? But, or she will, who knows? But, let's say he's relying on her testimony, but then what if the Children of the Watch don't accept Bo-Katan's testimony because she's not worthy, or she messed things up, or whatever?
She takes her mask off. That's enough for them.
Right.
And she left Death Watch.
Right. So what if they don't accept it, and then Din is like, but I did this. He may have a crisis of faith and a fork in the road where he has to decide, do I still want to try to appease this group of people and their specific letter of the law type of lifestyle, or do I know what happened to me? Do I know the reason that I took off my helmet? Kind of the spirit of the law situation. So is he going to sort of try to unite people and be a bridge? That's what I'm wondering, and that I'm hoping for Din Djarin.
One other thing about the Watch, they're definitely not the group Bo-Katan was part of, I don't think. And then the other thing is in all of this, I remember watching in the first season, little Din Djarin losing his parents and then being rescued, and yet he never seems to talk about them. Like, he's completely lost his culture before becoming a Mandalore. And that's the only thing that I find odd about all of this, is like anyone that they bring into the Watch, especially the young foundlings, lose their past. And that's all they have is the Watch. And it's just, I don't know, there's parts of that that's like, man, that kind of disturbs me. And anytime they bring up the word cult in reference to the Watch, it makes you think about some scary cults that have been out there in history where they purposely do that and distance kids from who they were. So it's like, that's always the one thing in the background there that just kind of is like a little makes me uneasy sometimes.
Well, there's another parallel in Star Wars. The Jedi do that.
Right.
But the Jedi stopped doing that because I think that was part of their downfall. They realized they were taking them too young. But
well, Luke definitely seemed to think that, and even Ahsoka, but she was sort of raised in that system. But, Luke seemed to be more open, to someone who isn't basically like a toddler, So yeah, that's true. Andrew, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, not on that specifically, but I mean, overall, I think we're seeing that, in this episode, it sets up like, okay, we're pretty sure this sort of conflict of interests and beliefs between Din and Bo is probably going to start a conflict between, the Watch and the other Mandalorians out there that are, the ones that see the Watch as like these radical cult-like, people that they sort of put a lot of the blame on for the end of Mandalore, and and the other way around is like, oh, the Watch looks at these other Mandalorians, who sort of drifted away from the quote unquote creed and the way, that's not going away, and whether it's like you mentioned, Angela, if it's going to be a case of where Din needs to unite, usually when even someone like Din, who, obviously he doesn't care. I mean, he's not aggressive towards Bo for being, for having her mask off, and, it doesn't like offend him, like it would some of the, probably most of the other members of the Watch. So yeah, what's going to happen when, they encounter each other?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be pretty. And I think usually in these situations, we've seen far too much. There's going to be a war at first, and then whoever's left on both sides have to figure it out from there. Is that what we're going to see? I mean, maybe. I mean, I in some of the trailers.
Way.
Yeah, I know, right?
Fight it out.
Exactly. Is it just going to be history repeating itself? I'm sure. My guess is that there's going to be some of that, but obviously there's going to be a sort of evolution or revolution, with Din leading the way. And I think there's going to be battles of faith for him, and certainly for Bo. Where does Grogu fit in all this? Like, obviously he's loyal to Din. Will Grogu start thinking for himself at some point? Who knows? I mean, we're obviously seeing Grogu being able to, we didn't talk about it enough. I mean, he can hold his own now. He's definitely wielding the Force in a way that we haven't seen before. And he's able to go on, little mini missions himself. So yeah, we'll maybe Grogu's the one. I mean, obviously from episode 1, there's a reason why that episode ended with the reveal of his character. So I'm sure Grogu will have a say or a pivotal role in how things shake out.
Jason, what are your last thoughts here as we're wrapping up?
Well, I did see a quick thing about Grogu on YouTube. Somebody was saying that they noticed up until the end of season 2, I think even in Book of Boba Fett, whenever Grogu would be talking, the captions would say cooing, and now it says babbling. So there's some advancement there from cooing to babbling. But I also thought it was interesting that I never noticed in the seasons before that he had full control of his pod. This time they clearly made it obvious that he had a little control box in there, and he could turn the light on and he could go where he wanted to. He could stop when he wanted to. Before, the only thing I ever saw him do to it was close it that one time when there was about to be a fight. But I thought that was interesting, and it made me decide I want one. If they could, make one of those.
A Jason-sized
cool.
one.
Yeah. It'd have to be pretty big, but.
Kathryn, what are your final thoughts here?
All right. I have one more just funny off the wall thought. If the season was right now at this point in time to be taken over by the Hallmark Channel, you would have a storyline like this. Single father of adopted son rescued 3 times by a princess of a fallen kingdom. The child unites them as a family and they restore the kingdom. High Magistrate Grief Karga and the armorer lead the ceremony as Din Djarin with his groomsmen, Boba, Marshal Cobb Vanth, and one of the Vizsla guys, and Bo's bridesmaids, Ahsoka, Sabine, and Casca, all join together with Grogu in his little pram riding up with the rings. And then ceremony full armor, and as they say, you may kiss. Both helmets come off, big kiss. The armorer says, this is the way. Grogu brings up the mythosaur, since he's so good at communicating with Rancors, he could do that with a mythosaur, and they ride off into the sunset. There's my funny take.
I wouldn't be mad at that.
Then there needs to be an alternate, multiverse of Grogu and Mandalorian. So definitely would love to see that. Would not be mad at it. But it's funny because you mentioned that Grogu could tame the mythosaur, and that's part of my theories. I do think he's going to end up having something to do with that potentially, because he seems to have that connection with animals or whatever you call it in Star Wars. So
maybe that's why Tar could ride him, because Tar was a Jedi.
That's true. Yeah. And it seems like from Rebels that, how Ezra could communicate with animals through the Force, that must be like a Force ability. So seems like Grogu has it.
And just imagine that scale perspective.
Oh my gosh.
Tiny Grogu and the giant mythosaur.
Well, let's wrap it up here. What do you all think about this episode? Star Wars, what is your Hallmark alternate storyline? Let us know what you caught, what you thought. Send your feedback on any Star Wars related questions or comments to us. You can email starwars@sqpn.com, or you can find Star Quest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Leave a comment there, or you can tweet us at SQPN. And be sure to share the podcast on social media as well. Subscribe, all those good things. We have Secrets of Star Wars on Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, all the things. And you can find us at sqpn.com/Star Wars. We definitely want to take a moment to recognize and thank the people who make this podcast possible, our patrons, including Teresa M., Marcelo P., Bo B., Mark R., and Brian B. And you too can help StarQuest continue our mission by becoming a patron at sqpn.com/give. We also want to invite you to join us on Discord. If you're not on Discord, simply go to sqpn.com/Discord and you can join our Discord server. We have a lot of Star Wars conversations there as well. We continue sort of the show and all of our conversation as the week goes on. So feel free to hop on there as well. And after listening to this episode, please rate and review our podcast if you haven't already, to let us know how we're doing and also to help us get seen by more people who'd be interested in listening to the secrets of Star Wars. Next week, we will be back to discuss Chapter 19 of The Mandalorian. Who knows where that's headed? Until next time, Jason Eugea, thank you for joining us in the secrets of Star Wars.
Thanks. It was a great discussion. I appreciated being part of it.
Absolutely. And Kathryn Laffrey as well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
And of course, Mr. Mudhorn, Andrew Hermiz. Great to have you with us again, buddy.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Once again, I'm Angela Sealana, the Bendu. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Stargate. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Stargate.